They say the universe is silent because intelligent species learn to stay quiet. They learn to bow. They learn to kneel before the ones who came first, the ones who built empires while others were still crawling out of oceans. Every species in the galaxy had learned that lesson. Every single one had bent the knee to the Galactic Council, had accepted their place in the great order of things, had whispered their gratitude for being allowed to exist. Every species, that is, except one, the humans, did not kneel. And that single act of defiance would shake the galaxy to its very core. This is not a story about diplomacy. This is a story about what happens when you push the wrong species too far. The message arrived on a Tuesday. It came not through any human communication channel, not through radio waves or satellite signals or anything Earth scientists had ever built. It came through a tear in the sky itself, a bright golden line that split the clouds above the Atlantic Ocean, visible from every continent. Impossible to ignore. The line hung in the air for exactly 17 minutes. During those 17 minutes, every electronic device on the planet received the same transmission, translated perfectly into every human language spoken on Earth. The message was simple. It read, "You have been observed. You have been measured. You have been found acceptable for integration. A delegation will arrive in 30 standard rotations. Prepare your leaders. Resistance is unnecessary and will not be tolerated. Welcome to the Galactic Council." The world went mad. Within hours, every government on Earth was in emergency session. The United Nations called an extraordinary meeting. Military forces around the globe went to their highest alert levels. Religious leaders prayed. Scientists scrambled to analyze the transmission. Social media exploded with theories, fears, hopes, and arguments. Some people celebrated. They believed this was the greatest moment in human history, the moment when humanity would finally join a larger community of intelligent beings. Others panicked. They saw the words, "Resistance will not be tolerated," and understood exactly what kind of invitation this really was. Commander Adrian Cole was sitting in a small office at the Pentagon when his phone rang. He was 47 years old, a career military officer with graying hair at his temples and scars on his hands from 3 different combat deployments. He had spent his entire adult life preparing for threats, analyzing enemies, building strategies. But nothing in his training had prepared him for the voice on the other end of that phone call. "Cole, this is General Morrison. Get to the Situation Room. Now." Adrian did not ask questions. He never did. He put on his jacket, straightened his tie, and walked through the corridors of the Pentagon with the same calm, steady stride he always had. Around him, people were running. Aides were shouting into phones. Officers were arguing in hallways. The entire building felt like a beehive that someone had kicked. But Adrian walked calmly. He had learned a long time ago that panic was a luxury soldiers could not afford. The Situation Room was already full when he arrived. Generals, admirals, intelligence directors, and civilian advisors packed the long table. Screens on every wall showed news feeds from around the world. The golden line in the sky had faded, but its image was being replayed on every channel, in every country, in every language. The President of the United States was on a secure video link from the White House, her face tight with controlled tension. "Commander Cole," General Morrison said, gesturing to an empty chair. "Sit down. We need your assessment." Adrian sat. He looked at the screens. He looked at the faces around the table. He saw fear in some of them, excitement in others, confusion in most. He took a slow breath. "What do we know?" he asked. "Almost nothing," said Dr. Elena Vasquez, the lead scientific advisor. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and an accent that carried traces of 3 different countries. "The transmission was broadcast on a frequency we have never detected before. It penetrated every known shielding, every Faraday cage, every underground bunker, every submarine at depth. There was no way to block it. The translation was perfect, down to regional dialects. Whoever sent this has been studying us for a very long time." "How long?" Adrian asked. "We cannot say for certain, but the level of linguistic understanding suggests decades at minimum, possibly centuries." Adrian nodded slowly. He turned to the intelligence director. "Any signs of physical approach? Ships, objects in orbit?" "Nothing on any of our detection systems," the director said. "No radar contacts, no infrared signatures, no gravitational anomalies. If they are out there, they are completely invisible to everything we have." "They are out there," Adrian said quietly. They told us they have been watching. That means they have assets in our system, possibly in our orbit, possibly on our surface. We just cannot see them. The room went silent for a moment. The weight of that statement settled over everyone like a cold blanket. An intelligence presence they could not detect, technology they could not understand, and a message that sounded less like an invitation and more like a command. The president spoke from her screen. Commander Cole, I am told you are one of our best strategic minds. I need you to be honest with me. What are we dealing with? Adrian looked at the president's face on the screen. He respected her. She was tough, smart, and she did not play games. So he gave her the truth. Madam President, we are dealing with a civilization, or a group of civilizations, that is so far beyond us technologically that we might as well be throwing rocks at fighter jets. They have faster-than-light communication. They have surveillance capabilities we cannot detect. They have the ability to broadcast a signal that penetrates every defensive system on the planet simultaneously. If they wanted to destroy us, they probably could have done it already. The fact that they sent a message instead of a weapon is the only reason I have any hope at all. So, we should cooperate? The president asked. I did not say that, Adrian said. I said they are more advanced. That does not mean we should surrender. Every predator in nature is more advanced than its prey. That does not stop the prey from fighting back. And sometimes, the prey wins. General Morrison leaned forward. Cole, you are talking about fighting an enemy we cannot see, cannot detect, and cannot match technologically. How exactly do you propose we do that? I do not know yet, Adrian admitted. But I know this. That message said resistance will not be tolerated. In my experience, the only people who say that are the ones who are afraid of resistance. If they were truly invincible, they would not need to warn us. That statement changed the temperature in the room. People who had been slouching sat up straighter. Eyes that had been dull with fear sharpened with thought. It was a small thing, a single observation, but it planted a seed. And seeds, as Adrian knew well, could grow into very dangerous things. Over the next 4 days, Earth's governments engaged in the most intense period of cooperation in human history. Old rivalries were set aside. Old grudges were shelved. The United States, Russia, China, the European Union, India, and dozens of other nations formed a unified response committee. They called it the Earth Defense Coalition, and they gave it one job: prepare for the arrival of the Galactic Council delegation. The preparation had 2 tracks. The first track was diplomatic. Teams of linguists, anthropologists, political scientists, and negotiators began working on protocols for first contact. They studied every piece of science fiction ever written, every philosophical treatise on alien contact, every game theory model they could find. They prepared speeches, offers, questions, and proposals. They designed a welcome ceremony. They chose representatives. They practiced smiling. The second track was military, and that track was Adrian Cole's responsibility. Adrian was given command of a secret project called Operation Blackthorn. Its mission was simple on paper and nearly impossible in practice: develop a defensive capability against an enemy whose technology was completely unknown. Adrian assembled a team of the best military minds on the planet. He recruited scientists, engineers, hackers, strategists, and unconventional thinkers. He set up a command center deep underground in the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that had been built during the Cold War and upgraded many times since. We are not trying to match their technology, Adrian told his team on the first day. We cannot do that. What we can do is think. We can adapt. We can be unpredictable. Every great military victory in human history was won not by the side with better weapons, but by the side that thought differently than its enemy expected. Dr. Vasquez was assigned to his team as the chief science advisor. She brought with her every piece of data they had on the alien transmission. In the first week, she made a discovery that changed everything. The transmission was not just a message, she told Adrian, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and terror. It contained a data packet. Hidden inside the signal, layered beneath the linguistic content, there was a compressed file. It took our best quantum computers 3 days to unpack it. Commander, it is a document. A very long document. What kind of document? Adrian asked. It is the Charter of the Galactic Council. Their laws, their rules, their history. Everything a new species needs to know before integration. She paused. It is also a warning. Adrian read the document. It took him 2 full days. When he finished, he sat alone in his office for a long time, staring at the wall. Then he called a meeting with his entire team. "I am going to summarize what I have learned," he said, his voice flat and controlled. The Galactic Council has existed for approximately 200,000 years. It consists of over 400 species from across the galaxy. It is governed by a hierarchy. The founding species, the ones who have been members the longest, hold the most power. New species are integrated at the bottom of this hierarchy. They are given limited rights, limited territory, limited autonomy. They are expected to contribute resources, labor, and military forces to the Council in exchange for protection and access to shared technology. He paused and looked around the room. Every face was focused on him. In practice, he continued, this means that new species become servants. They mine resources for the older species. They fight in wars they did not start. They follow laws they did not write. They are grateful for whatever scraps are thrown to them. Species that resist integration are given one warning. If they continue to resist, they are subjugated by force. If they fight back against subjugation, they are destroyed completely. Their planets are sterilized. Their history is erased. The document lists 17 species that have been destroyed in this way over the last 200,000 years. The room was deathly silent. "We have 26 days before their delegation arrives," Adrian said. "We need to be ready." "Ready for what?" someone asked. "You just said they destroy species that resist." Adrian looked at the person who had spoken. It was a young lieutenant, barely 30, with fear written plainly on her face. He did not blame her. He was afraid too. But fear, like panic, was something he had learned to use rather than surrender to. "They destroy species that resist the way they expect species to resist," Adrian said. "We are not going to do what they expect." In the weeks that followed, Adrian's team worked around the clock. They analyzed every piece of the Council Charter, looking for weaknesses, loopholes, contradictions. They studied the descriptions of previous integrations and previous destructions. They mapped out the Council's decision-making process, its military structure, its communication networks. They built models and ran simulations. They argued and debated and sometimes shouted at each other. And slowly, a plan began to take shape. Meanwhile, the rest of Earth prepared for the diplomatic track. The welcome ceremony was planned for Geneva, Switzerland. A massive pavilion was constructed in front of the Palais des Nations. World leaders practiced their remarks. Musicians rehearsed a performance that was meant to showcase the best of human culture. Artists created displays. Chefs prepared food from every corner of the world. It was beautiful. It was hopeful. It was exactly what the Galactic Council expected. Adrian watched the preparations on his screens and felt a heaviness in his chest. He knew something that most of the people building that pavilion did not. He knew that the Council did not care about human music or human food or human art. He knew that the delegation was not coming to appreciate humanity. It was coming to assess humanity, to measure its usefulness, to determine how best to exploit it. And he knew that if his plan failed, everything those hopeful people were building would be turned to ash. On the 29th day, the sky changed again. This time it was not a golden mine. It was a shadow, a vast dark shape that appeared above the clouds over Geneva, blocking out the sun. It was a ship, but the word ship felt absurd when applied to something that size. It was more like a floating city, a structure so enormous that it created its own weather patterns. Clouds swirled around it. The temperature dropped beneath it. Birds fell silent for 100 miles in every direction. The ship did not land. It simply hung there, motionless, silent, impossibly large. And from its underside, a smaller craft descended. This one was sleek and silver, shaped like a teardrop, and it moved without any visible means of propulsion. It drifted down through the atmosphere with the elegance of a leaf falling from a tree, and it settled gently on the ground in front of the pavilion, exactly in the center of the landing zone that had been prepared. A ramp extended from the craft, and the delegation of the Galactic Council stepped onto Earth for the first time. There were 5 of them. They were tall, taller than any human, with elongated limbs and skin that seemed to shift color depending on the light. Their eyes were large and dark, without visible pupils, and they moved with a fluid grace that made human movement look clumsy by comparison. They wore robes that appeared to be made of light itself, shifting and flowing like liquid metal. They were beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The leader of the delegation stepped forward. It looked at the assembled world leaders, at the musicians, at the artists, at the soldiers standing at attention, at the cameras broadcasting the moment to every screen on Earth. And it spoke. Its voice was deep and resonant, and it carried across the pavilion without any apparent amplification. We are the voice of the Galactic Council. We have come to welcome Earth into the fold of civilized species. We bring knowledge, technology, and order. In return, we ask only for your cooperation and your contribution to the great work of the Council. The Secretary-General of the United Nations stepped forward with a prepared speech. He smiled. He extended his hand. He began to speak words of welcome and gratitude and hope. And deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Adrian Cole watched the scene on his screen, his jaw tight, his hands steady, and whispered to himself, "Not yet, but soon." The game had begun. And humanity was about to play it in a way the galaxy had never seen before. The delegation stayed for 7 days. 7 days of ceremonies, banquets, tours, and presentations. 7 days of smiling faces and careful words. 7 days during which the entire world held its breath and tried very hard to look civilized. And during all 7 of those days, the 5 tall beings from the Galactic Council observed everything with those dark, unreadable eyes, and they revealed almost nothing about themselves. Adrian Cole did not attend any of the ceremonies. He was not invited to the banquets. He did not shake hands with the alien delegation or pose for photographs. He stayed underground in the cold fluorescent light of the Blackthorn Command Center, and he watched. He watched every second of every interaction on screens that covered an entire wall. He recorded every word, every gesture, every flicker of color across the alien's shifting skin, and he had his team analyze all of it. "Their skin changes are not random," Dr. Vasquez reported on the 3rd day. She had not slept in 40 hours, and her eyes were red, but her voice was sharp and certain. The color shifts correspond to emotional states. "We have identified at least 12 distinct patterns: blue-green for condescension, deep purple for amusement, pale gold for what I believe is contempt. They have been cycling through condescension, amusement, and contempt almost continuously since they arrived." "They think we are animals," Adrian said. "Effectively, yes. The way they interact with our leaders, the way they pause before responding to questions, the way they position their bodies during conversations. It is all consistent with a dominant species interacting with what it considers an inferior one. They are being polite the way a person might be polite to a dog that has learned to shake hands. It is impressive for a dog, but it does not make the dog an equal." Adrian nodded. He had suspected as much from reading the Council Charter, but having it confirmed through behavioral analysis gave the suspicion the weight of fact. He turned to Colonel James Park, his chief military strategist, a Korean-American officer with a mind like a chess computer and the patience of a stone. "James, what have you pulled from their technology?" Colonel Park brought up a series of images on the main screen. They showed the Silver Teardrop craft from every angle, captured by dozens of cameras and sensors that had been hidden around the landing zone. "The craft uses no propulsion system we can identify," Park said. "No heat signature, no electromagnetic emissions, no gravitational distortion. It simply moves. Our best theory is some form of space-time manipulation, essentially bending reality around the craft rather than pushing the craft through reality. We cannot replicate it. We cannot even properly understand it." "What about the mothership in orbit?" Adrian asked. "Still there, still blocking the sun over Geneva. Our satellites have been trying to map its surface, but it appears to absorb all scanning frequencies. Radar, LiDAR, infrared, ultraviolet. Everything we send at it disappears. We estimate its size at approximately 80 kilometers in diameter, but that estimate could be off by a significant margin. 80 kilometers. Adrian let that number sit in his mind. A ship, 80 kilometers wide, hanging in orbit like a moon. The largest aircraft carrier ever built by humans was 330 meters long. The comparison was so absurd it was almost funny. Almost. "We are not going to fight that ship," Adrian said calmly. "If it comes to a fight, we lose. Every simulation we have run confirms that. Their technology is too far beyond ours. A direct military confrontation would last approximately 4 hours before Earth's surface was reduced to glass." The room stirred uncomfortably. These were military people. They had spent their lives preparing to fight. Being told they could not fight was like being told they could not breathe. "So what do we do?" asked Major Sarah Chen, a young intelligence officer who had earned her place on the team by being the single most creative strategic thinker Adrian had ever encountered. She had a habit of seeing patterns that no one else could see, and her ideas were often so unconventional that people dismissed them as crazy right up until the moment they worked perfectly.
"We do what humans have always done when faced with a stronger enemy," Adrian said.
"We cheat." He stood up and walked to the main screen. He pulled up a section of the Council Charter that he had highlighted in red. "Article 7, Section 12 of the Galactic Council Charter," he read aloud. "Any species undergoing integration may invoke the right of demonstration. This right allows the incoming species to present a case for elevated status within the Council hierarchy, based on unique capabilities, resources, or strategic value. The right of demonstration must be invoked before the formal integration ceremony and must be witnessed by a quorum of Council representatives. The Council expects us to accept bottom-tier status. They expect us to say thank you and start mining asteroids for their benefit. But their own laws give us an opening. If we can demonstrate that humanity has something the Council needs, something no other species can provide, we can negotiate from a position of strength instead of weakness. What could we possibly have that 400 advanced species do not already possess?" Colonel Park asked, not skeptically, but genuinely curious. Adrian smiled. It was a thin, sharp smile that did not reach his eyes. "Us," he said. "We have us." Over the next 3 days, while the diplomatic show continued above ground, Adrian's team worked to refine the plan. The idea was built on a single observation that Dr. Vasquez had made during her analysis of the Council Charter. "The Charter describes over 400 species," she explained to the team. "Each entry includes a brief description of the species' characteristics, strengths, and weaknesses. I have read every single entry, and I noticed something remarkable. Every species in the Council is specialized. The Velthari are brilliant engineers. The Draconeth are unmatched in theoretical physics. The Morsai are master biologists. Each species excels in one or two areas and is average or below average in everything else." She brought up a chart that mapped the capabilities of Council species across dozens of categories. "Now look at humans," she said, pointing to a new entry she had added to the chart. "We are not the best at anything. Not engineering, not physics, not biology, not mathematics, not art, not warfare. By any single measure, we are mediocre compared to the specialists in the Council." "That does not sound like much of an advantage," Major Chen said. "It is not if you look at single measures," Vasquez agreed. "But look at the pattern. We are above average in almost everything. We are generalists. We adapt. We cross-pollinate ideas between fields. We take a concept from biology and apply it to engineering. We use artistic thinking to solve mathematical problems. We wage war using psychology and economics as much as weapons. No species in the Council does this. They cannot. Their specialization is hardwired, biological. They literally do not have the neural flexibility to think outside their area of expertise." The room went quiet as the implications sank in. "We are the only generalists in a galaxy of specialists," Adrian said. "And generalists in the right situation are more dangerous than any specialist." The plan was audacious. It was risky. It was, as Major Chen put it, completely insane in the best possible way, and it required perfect timing. On the 6th day of the delegation's visit, the Council representatives presented the formal terms of Earth's integration. The ceremony was held in the main hall of the Palais des Nations, broadcast to the entire world. The 5 delegates stood at the front of the hall, their robes glowing with soft light, their dark eyes sweeping across the assembled human leaders. The lead delegate spoke. "Earth will be designated as a resource contribution world, Category 7. Your primary obligations will include the mining and processing of rare minerals found in your asteroid belt, the provision of biological specimens for Council research programs, and the contribution of labor forces for infrastructure projects on Council-designated worlds. In return, Earth will receive protection from external threats, access to basic Council technology, and representation at the lowest tier of the Council Assembly. These terms are standard. They are non-negotiable. You will sign the integration agreement tomorrow." The human leaders looked at each other. Many of them had known this was coming, thanks to Adrian's briefings. But hearing it said aloud, in that deep, resonant voice, in front of the entire world, made it real in a way that briefings never could. Earth was being told to become a mining colony, a labor camp, a specimen jar, and they were expected to be grateful. The Secretary General stood. His hands were trembling slightly, but his voice was steady. He had been briefed on the plan. He knew his role, and he played it perfectly. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, he said, we are grateful for this opportunity and for the generosity of your terms. However, before we proceed to the signing ceremony, Earth wishes to invoke the right of demonstration, as outlined in Article 7, Section 12 of the Council Charter. The effect on the delegation was immediate and visible. Their skin flashed through several colors in rapid succession: pale gold, deep red, a shade of violet that Vasquez's team had not yet catalogued. The lead delegate's dark eyes narrowed slightly, the first visible change in its facial expression since arriving on Earth. You have read the charter, it said. There was something new in its voice. Not anger, exactly. More like surprise. And beneath the surprise, something that might have been respect, or might have been caution. We have, the Secretary General confirmed. The right of demonstration has not been invoked by a new species in over 9,000 years. Most species do not read the charter before integration. They simply accept. We are not most species, the Secretary General said. Another flash of colors across the delegation's skin. The lead delegate was still for a long moment. Then it spoke again. The right of demonstration requires a quorum of council representatives. We are 5. The minimum quorum is 7. We will need to summon additional representatives from the mothership. This will delay the integration by 3 days. Is this acceptable? It is. We will convene in 3 days. You may prepare your demonstration. The delegate paused. I advise you to consider carefully. In the 9,000-year history of the right of demonstration, no species has ever successfully argued for elevated status. The Council does not change its assessments easily, and a failed demonstration does not improve your position. It worsens it. We understand, the Secretary General said, and he smiled. 3 days. Adrian had 3 days to prepare the most important presentation in the history of the human species. He had anticipated this timeline. His team was ready, but ready and confident were two very different things. The demonstration was planned in 3 phases. The first phase was intellectual. Humanity would present its cross-disciplinary thinking, its ability to connect ideas across fields, its history of innovation born from the collision of different types of knowledge. This phase would be presented by a team of scientists, artists, and philosophers, hand-picked by Vasquez. The second phase was strategic. Humanity would present a series of tactical and strategic scenarios drawn from human military history that demonstrated the kind of unpredictable, adaptive thinking that no specialist species could match. This phase was Adrian's responsibility. The third phase was the gamble, and it was Major Chen's idea. We do not just show them what we can do, Chen had argued during the planning sessions. We show them what we will do if they try to force us into servitude. We make them understand that integrating humanity as a bottom-tier resource world would be the worst strategic mistake in Council history, not because we can defeat them militarily, but because we will never stop fighting. We will never stop resisting. We will be a splinter in their paw for the rest of eternity. And the cost of keeping us down will always exceed the value of what they take from us. That is a threat, Colonel Park pointed out. No, Chen corrected. It is a promise. And there is a difference. A threat is something you might or might not follow through on. A promise is what you do regardless of the consequences. The Council needs to understand that humanity makes promises, not threats. Adrian approved the plan. He approved it because it was smart, because it was bold, and because deep in his gut he believed it was true. Humans were not a species that surrendered. History had proven that 1,000 times over. Every empire that had ever tried to subjugate a human population had eventually learned the same lesson. You could defeat humans. You could occupy their land. You could destroy their cities, but you could never ever make them stop fighting. It was not a choice. It was a biological imperative, wired into human DNA by millions of years of evolution, on a planet that was constantly trying to kill them. The 3 days passed in a blur of preparation, rehearsal, and barely controlled anxiety. The world watched and waited. People gathered in public squares and living rooms, in churches and bars, in schools and hospitals. Every screen on every continent showed the same countdown. The fate of the species was about to be decided, and every human being alive knew it. On the morning of the demonstration, the sky over Geneva was grey and cold. The mothership still hung above the city, a dark silhouette against the clouds. 7 council representatives now stood in the great hall of the Palais des Nations. The original 5 had been joined by 2 more, both from different species. One was short and broad, with thick grey skin and 4 arms. The other was thin and translucent, its internal organs visible through its body like a living X-ray. Together they formed the quorum required by the Charter. Adrian stood in the wings of the hall, watching. He was not a diplomat. He was not a politician. He was a soldier. But today, he was something more. Today, he was the voice of a species. The intellectual phase went well. The human presenters showed the council how a musician's understanding of harmony had led to breakthroughs in quantum physics, how a painter's study of light had revolutionized optical engineering, how a chef's experiments with fermentation had opened new pathways in biotechnology, how a poet's metaphor had solved a mathematical proof that had stumped specialists for decades. The council representatives watched with their dark, unreadable eyes. Their skin flickered through colors. The one with translucent skin seemed especially interested, its organs pulsing with visible activity. Then it was Adrian's turn. He walked to the center of the hall. He wore his military uniform, clean and pressed with every medal and ribbon in place. He carried no notes. He needed none. He had lived this material his entire life. Honored representatives, he began. I am Commander Adrian Cole of Earth's military forces. I am here to show you something that the data in your charter does not capture. Something that numbers and categories cannot measure. He activated a holographic display that his team had built using Earth's best technology. It was crude by council standards, flickering and slightly transparent, but it worked. And what it showed was a series of battles from human history. He showed them Thermopylae, where 300 soldiers held a mountain pass against an army of hundreds of thousands, not because they could win, but because they chose to fight anyway. He showed them Stalingrad, where an entire city refused to fall, where civilians fought with kitchen knives and bare hands against the most powerful military machine their world had ever seen. He showed them the tunnels of Ku Chi, where farmers and shopkeepers fought a technological superpower to a standstill using nothing but ingenuity, determination, and an absolute refusal to quit. He showed them a dozen more examples, battles where humans were outnumbered, outgunned, outmatched in every measurable way, and fought anyway, and won. Not always, not even usually, but often enough to make the pattern undeniable. You have 400 species in your council, Adrian said, his voice steady and clear. Every one of them accepted integration peacefully. Every one of them bent the knee, and the 17 species that resisted were destroyed. He paused. But those 17 species were specialists. They resisted in predictable ways, using their particular strengths, and the council knew exactly how to counter them. He looked at the lead delegate directly. Humanity is not predictable. We are not specialists. We do not have one strength that you can identify and neutralize. We adapt. We improvise. We find the one crack in any wall, and we pour ourselves through it. If you integrate us as a servant species, we will resist. Not openly, not at first. We will smile and mine your asteroids and send our people to your labor camps. And while we are smiling, we will be learning your technology, learning your weaknesses, learning the 1,000 small ways a species can break a system from the inside. He let the silence hang for a moment. You have never dealt with a species like us. Your charter, your history, your experience, none of it has prepared you for what humanity will do if you try to put a leash on us. We are not a threat. We are a promise. And the council needs to decide whether it wants humanity as a partner or as a problem, because we will never, ever be a servant. The hall was silent. The 7 council representatives stood perfectly still. Their skin was a color that no human had seen before, a deep shimmering black that seemed to absorb the light around it. Vasquez, watching from the audience, felt her breath catch. She had no data on that color. It was something new. The lead delegate stared at Adrian for a long, long time. Then it turned to the other representatives and spoke in a language that the human translators could not decipher. The 7 aliens conferred among themselves, their skin cycling through rapid patterns of color. Their voices a low, musical murmur that filled the hall like the sound of a distant ocean. After several minutes, the lead delegate turned back to face the human assembly. "We will consider your demonstration," it said. "We will return to the mothership and deliberate. A decision will be communicated within one planetary rotation." WAL. The delegation left. The silver teardrop craft rose from the ground and disappeared into the belly of the mothership. And the world waited, barely breathing, for the answer that would determine the future of the human species. Adrian watched the craft vanish and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Not hope exactly. Something more complicated. Something that combined terror and pride and determination into a single burning feeling in his chest. He had played his card. He had shown the galaxy what humanity was. Now all he could do was wait to see if the galaxy was smart enough to be afraid. The mothership went dark that night. Every light on its massive surface, lights that had been glowing steadily since its arrival, flickered out simultaneously. The ship became a black void against the stars, a hole in the sky where light simply ceased to exist. People around the world stared up at it and felt a primal, ancient fear stir in their bones. It was the fear of the dark, the fear of something vast and unknowable hovering just above. Watching, deciding. He sat in the Blackthorn Command Center and stared at the satellite feeds that showed nothing but darkness where the mothership should have been. His coffee had gone cold hours ago. Around him, his team worked in hushed voices, monitoring every sensor, every frequency, every possible signal. They found nothing. The ship had become a ghost. "They are deliberating, Dr. Tim," Vasquez said, sitting down beside him. She looked exhausted. Her hair, normally pulled back in a tight bun, had come loose and hung around her face in dark tangles. But her eyes were bright and alert. "The charter says that deliberation on a right of demonstration requires a full council vote, not just the quorum present on Earth. They are probably communicating with the rest of the council right now, transmitting the recording of our demonstration to hundreds of species across the galaxy." "How long will that take?" Adrian asked. "Depends on their communication speed. If they have instantaneous communication, which their initial transmission suggests they might, the deliberation could be happening right now. If not, it could take days, weeks, or longer." "They said one planetary rotation," Adrian reminded her. 24 hours. They did. Which means either they have very fast communication, or the decision rests with the quorum present and does not require a full council vote. She paused. "Or they have already made up their minds and the deliberation is just for show." Adrian looked at her. "Which do you think it is?" Vasquez was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think they were surprised. Genuinely surprised. A color their skin turned at the end, a deep black. I have been cross-referencing it with every pattern we have catalogued. It does not correspond to any emotion we have identified. It is something new, something we have never seen in them before." "Could be anger," Adrian said. "Could be. Could also be fear. Or awe. Or something we do not have a human word for. We are dealing with alien minds, Commander. We cannot assume their emotional landscape maps onto ours." Adrian nodded. She was right. But he was a soldier, and soldiers plan for the worst case, and the worst case was anger. "If they come back hostile," he said quietly, "what are our options?" Vasquez did not answer immediately. She pulled up a data screen and typed for a moment. Then she turned it toward him. "I have been working on something. A contingency. I did not want to bring it up until it was necessary because it is, frankly, terrifying. But I think it might be necessary now." Adrian looked at the screen. His eyes widened slightly. Then he read everything on it twice and sat back in his chair. "Can it work?" he asked. "In theory, yes. The alien transmission gave us more data than they probably intended. Hidden in a charter document were technical specifications, formatting standards, communication protocols. Essentially, the blueprints for how the Council's information network operates. I believe we can use those protocols to send a signal of our own, not to communicate. To disrupt. You are talking about hacking an alien network. I am talking about introducing a virus into a galactic communication system. A very specific virus, designed to do one thing. Broadcast a message to every species in the Council. Our message. Unfiltered. Uncensored. Directly from humanity to every ear in the galaxy."
Adrian stared at her.
"If it fails, they will see it as an attack. Yes. If it succeeds, they will still see it as an attack, yes. But they will also hear what we have to say. And once it is out there, once every species in the galaxy has heard the voice of humanity, they cannot unhear it. Whatever the Council decides about us, the galaxy will know we exist. They will know we did not go quietly. Adrian thought about it for a long time. Outside the command center, deep in the earth, surrounded by stone and steel and the weight of a mountain, he thought about the 8 billion people on the surface above him. Mothers putting children to bed, workers heading to early shifts, old men playing chess in parks, teenagers laughing in hallways, all of them depending on decisions being made in rooms they would never see, by people they would never meet. All of them trusting that someone, somewhere was looking out for them. "Prepare the virus," he said. "But do not launch it unless I give the order. If the Council comes back with a reasonable response, we do not need it." "This is a last resort." "Understood," Vasquez said, and she went back to work. The hours crawled past. Dawn came to Geneva, grey and cold. The mothership was still dark. The world was still waiting. Adrian ate a meal he did not taste and drank coffee he did not feel. He reviewed Operation Blackthorn's contingency plans one more time, knowing that most of them were useless against an enemy this powerful, but reviewing them anyway because preparation was the only thing he could control. At exactly noon Geneva time, the mothership lit up. It happened all at once. Every light on the vast surface blazed to life simultaneously, so bright that people on the ground shielded their eyes. The ship glowed white, then gold, then a deep, radiant blue that turned the clouds around it into something that looked like a painting of heaven. And from its underside, not one craft but 3 descended toward Earth. The first was the familiar silver teardrop. The other 2 were different. They were larger, angular, and dark. They looked like weapons. They looked like warships. Adrian's blood went cold. "All stations, battle alert," he said into his communicator. His voice did not shake. He would not allow it to shake. "This is not a drill. Prepare all contingencies." "Doctor." "Vasquez, stand by on the virus." "Standing by," Vasquez replied, her voice tight but steady. The 3 craft descended to Geneva. The 2 dark ships took positions on either side of the pavilion, hovering silently, their surfaces reflecting nothing. The silver teardrop landed in its usual spot. The ramp extended. This time it was not 5 representatives who emerged. It was 12. The original 5, plus 7 new ones, each from a different species. Adrian recognized some of them from the descriptions in the charter. A massive, bear-like creature covered in metallic fur. A being that appeared to be made entirely of crystallized light. A pair of insectoid creatures that moved in perfect synchronization, as if controlled by a single mind. Others that defied easy description. Shapes and forms that the human brain struggled to categorize. 12 representatives. The charter stated that a quorum of 12 was required for what the Council called a judgment of significance. Adrian had read about this. It was a classification reserved for events that could fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galaxy. It had only been convened 6 times in the Council's history. "This is it," Adrian whispered. "Whatever happens next changes everything." The 12 representatives entered the Great Hall. The human assembly was already gathered, world leaders and diplomats filling every seat. Adrian was there this time, standing at the back of the hall in his uniform, his eyes fixed on the alien delegation. The lead delegate stepped forward. Its skin was cycling through colors rapidly, a pattern that Vasquez's team had never seen, too complex to read, like watching someone speak a language that had never been translated. "People of Earth," the delegate said. Its voice filled the hall, deep and resonant. "The Galactic Council has deliberated on your demonstration. Your invocation of the right of demonstration and the content of your presentation have been transmitted to all 412 member species. The response has been unprecedented." It paused. The other representatives stood perfectly still behind it, a wall of alien bodies, motionless and silent. In the history of the Galactic Council, 17 species have been destroyed for refusing integration. 43 species have been forcibly subjugated. 352 species have accepted integration peacefully and without complaint. None have invoked the right of demonstration successfully. None have presented a case that challenged the Council's assessment. The hall was so silent that Adrian could hear his own heartbeat. Until now. A murmur rippled through the human assembly. Adrian felt his hands clench at his sides. Your demonstration revealed something that the Council has never encountered. A species with no specialization and no single dominant trait, yet with demonstrated capability across every category we measure. Your cross-disciplinary thinking, your adaptive warfare, your biological resilience. These are not traits we have seen in combination before. Individually, each trait exists in other species, but together, in a single species, they create something new. The delegate's skin shifted to a color Adrian had seen before, that deep shimmering black that had appeared at the end of the demonstration. Vasquez, sitting in the audience, was furiously taking notes. More significant than your capabilities was your message. Your commander spoke of resistance, of a species that will never stop fighting. We have heard such claims before. From the 17 species we destroyed, we dismissed those claims. We were correct to do so. Those species were predictable. Their resistance followed patterns we had encountered many times. They could be calculated and counted. The delegate looked directly at Adrian. Its dark eyes seemed to see through him, past his uniform, past his skin, down to something deeper. You are different. Your history confirms this. Your species has fought itself more viciously and more creatively than any species in our records has ever fought an external enemy. You have developed weapons capable of destroying your own planet and chosen not to use them, not because you could not, but because the game of mutual destruction was more interesting to you than the destruction itself. You have spent your entire existence at war with yourselves, and yet you have not only survived but thrived. This is unprecedented. This is, by any rational analysis, insane. A strange sound rippled through the alien delegation. It took Adrian a moment to recognize it. They were laughing, or their equivalent of laughing. The bear-like creature's metallic fur rippled, the crystal being pulsed with light. The insectoid pair clicked their mandibles in rapid rhythm. They found humanity funny. Not in a cruel way, Adrian realized. In the way that something genuinely surprising and bewildering and slightly terrifying could also be funny. The lead delegate continued, its skin shifting from black to something new, a deep, warm gold that seemed to radiate heat. The Council has reached a decision that has never been made before in our history. Earth will not be integrated as a resource contribution world. Earth will not be assigned to any existing category. The murmur in the hall grew louder. Adrian held his breath. Instead, the Council is creating a new category. Earth will be designated as an independent consultation world. This means the following. You will retain full sovereignty over your planet and your solar system. You will not be required to contribute resources, labor, or military forces to the Council. You will not be subject to Council law within your own territory. You will have a permanent seat on the Council Assembly, not at the lowest tier, but at the advisory level, equal to species that have been members for tens of thousands of years. World leaders stood from their seats. Some were cheering. Some were crying. Some were simply standing with their mouths open, unable to process what they had just heard. Adrian felt something crack inside his chest, something he had been holding together with iron discipline for weeks. He blinked hard and kept his face still, but the feeling was overwhelming. The delegate raised a hand and the hall fell silent again. In return, the Council asks for one thing: consultation. When the Council faces problems that our specialist species cannot solve, when we encounter situations that require the kind of flexible, unpredictable, cross-disciplinary thinking that your species excels at, we will come to you. We will present the problem. You will help us think about it differently. You will be our chaos factor, our wild card, the element of uncertainty in a galaxy that has become too certain, too predictable, too rigid. The delegate paused one final time. This is not generosity. I want that to be clear. This is strategy. The Council has survived for 200,000 years by incorporating the strengths of every species we encounter. Your strength is unlike any we have seen, and the Council is wise enough to know that trying to cage that strength would be far more costly than letting it run free. The delegate looked at Adrian again. Your commander told us that humanity is not a threat but a promise. We believe him. And the Council has decided that it would rather have that promise working alongside us than against us. Not with a battle, not with a war, not with the apocalyptic confrontation that billions of people had been dreading. It was over with words, with a demonstration, with the oldest and most fundamentally human act of all, looking a stronger opponent in the eye and refusing to blink. The celebrations that followed were unlike anything Earth had ever experienced. Every city on the planet erupted in spontaneous festivals. Strangers hugged each other on streets. Fireworks lit up skies on every continent. Music poured from every window. For one shining moment, all 8 billion humans on Earth felt the same thing at the same time. A fierce, wild pride in what they were. Adrian did not celebrate. He went back to the Blackthorn Command Center, sat in his chair, and told Vasquez to stand down the virus. Then he sat in silence for a long time, staring at nothing. Major Chen found him there an hour later. "Commander, are you all right?" Adrian looked at her. He thought about what to say. He thought about all the preparation, all the sleepless nights, all the scenarios he had run where humanity was destroyed, enslaved, or worse. He thought about the weight he had carried, the knowledge that the survival of his species might depend on his decisions. And he thought about the fact that, in the end, it was not military force that had saved them. It was not a weapon or a strategy or a trick. It was the truth, the simple, stubborn, irrational truth about what humanity was. "We got lucky," he said quietly. "Lucky?" Chen raised an eyebrow. "Commander, you just talked a galactic superpower into treating us as equals. That is not luck. They gave us respect because they were smart enough to understand what we showed them. If they had been less intelligent, less flexible, less willing to see value in something different from themselves, this could have ended very differently. We got lucky that the beings who hold power in this galaxy are wise enough to adapt." Chen thought about that. Then she said, "But we also made our own luck. We read their charter. We found the loophole. We prepared the demonstration. We told the truth about who we are. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. And we were prepared." Adrian smiled. It was the first real smile he had allowed himself in weeks. "You sound like a fortune cookie, Major." "I sound like a winner, Commander." He laughed. It was a short, surprised sound, like something escaping from a cage. And then he stood up, straightened his uniform, and went to join the celebration. In the months that followed, Earth's relationship with the Galactic Council evolved in ways that no one had predicted. Human consultants were sent to Council worlds to help solve problems that had stymied specialist species for centuries. A human engineer looked at a transportation network that the Velthari had been trying to optimize for 300 years and suggested a solution borrowed from the circulatory system of a jellyfish. A human artist helped the Morsai biologists see a pattern in genetic data that they had been too focused to notice. A human soldier taught the Draconith physicists how to think about time not as an equation but as a battlefield. And the insight led to a breakthrough in temporal mechanics that had been considered impossible. Humanity became the galaxy's problem solvers, the fixers, the ones you called when conventional thinking had failed and you needed someone who could look at the universe sideways and see something no one else could see. And in the Blackthorn Command Center, which was quietly maintained and staffed long after the crisis was over, Adrian Cole continued to prepare because he understood something that the Council did not. Respect was not the same as safety. Today's partner could be tomorrow's enemy, and humanity's greatest strength was not its ability to solve problems. It was its refusal to ever believe that a problem was truly solved. He kept Vasquez virus in cold storage. He kept his team sharp. He kept watching the skies, not with fear, not with suspicion, but with the calm, steady vigilance of a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and its own worst impulses. A species that knew, deep in its bones, that the universe was not a safe place and never would be. And that was fine, because humanity had never needed safety. It had only ever needed a fighting chance. The stars looked different now, seen through the lens of a galaxy that finally knew Earth's name. They looked like a frontier. They looked like a challenge. They looked, to 8 billion pairs of human eyes, like a promise. And humanity always kept its promises.